Hey, good morning, everyone. Chris Lopez here, and welcome to our Portfolio Analysis Mastermind 2.0. I am thrilled to kick this off and have a lot of people joining us live, so we appreciate you joining us. Before we get into the fun stuff, I have to give you a quick disclaimer. We are not CPAs. We are not lawyers. We are not licensed financial advisors. We're realtors, we're lenders, real estate investors. So everything we share with you today is what we do ourselves, but always check with your professional team. If you need recommendations, reach out to us. We're happy to share our referrals and our professional team with everyone as well. Now, jump into fun stuff. The goal of Portfolio Analysis Mastermind 2.0 is for you to walk away with a clear understanding about what opportunities you have in your portfolio, how is it currently performing, and then what opportunities you have in the current marketplace with the economic conditions going on based off of your property's performance, your investment performance, and also based off of your own risk tolerance and your goals here. Now, that is for you individually. Now, the mastermind aspect is something that I really love to incorporate because over the years, I have learned so much from just being in masterminds and being around communities and being around just other like-minded people. And that's a big goal here is like myself, I want to learn as well. My investing career, my business has always gotten better by learning from others. I definitely get focused on what I know. Then someone says something else, I'm like, wow, I never thought about that before. That is a better way to look at it. Thank you. Let's do it that way. So I want it to be a two-way street. We want it to be interactive. As you guys have questions, post them. If you have a different metric way you look at something, please share it. If you want to challenge us on anything, please do so. We want that type of feedback and that type of conversation. So the agenda for this webinar is I'm going to spend a few minutes and doing some basic intros and kind of going over the coursework and the course overview. And then we're going to go through a 5-step framework we use to actually go through and look at your real estate portfolio. And then get into the fun stuff. We're actually going there and review a portfolio. And it took me a couple weeks on getting this presentation put together. And I realized, you know what? Rather than trying to teach all this stuff, let me just go show my own portfolio because it'll be a great way to learn. Plus, I'll have hundreds of people giving me feedback, which is going to be a great thing as well. And so throughout this process or throughout the webinar and all other webinars, please ask questions live on the webinar. We will take breaks to answer them. We want this to be interactive. Now, moving on to our panel of experts. I already introduced myself. I am Chris Lopez. I get the privilege of putting this together and kind of guiding the whole conversation, and I am thrilled at it. And then our first expert is Lon Welsh. A lot of you know him from Your Castle Real Estate, and now he has his new business, Ironton Capital, help investors go out there and passively invest in real estate. As he often puts it, hit the easy button.
Yep.
And so this is a privilege for me because when I moved out here years ago, Lon, I used to sit in the back of Lon's classes and feverishly take notes to dissect his mind, apply it to my portfolio, help with my clients. Now I get to sit in the same studio with you and be on stage. So it's an honor and I'm thrilled at that.
It's an honor for me too. I've learned a lot from you.
Great. And then another expert is Jenny Bayless. A lot of you guys know her from Envision Advisors. She is one of our other portfolio analysis specialists. She unfortunately can't make the call today, but she does a lot behind the scenes, and you'll see her on some of the future webinars. So Jenny, we missed you today, but we'll see you here next week. And then we have Nicole Ruth, who I got the privilege of meeting about 6 months ago. I believe we started developing a relationship, and I was just inspired with the way you grew your business and also the way you've looked at analyzing your portfolios, and also whenever you work with your clients as a lender, I hear the common theme. How are you going to use this to build wealth in real estate? How are you going to use this to build generational wealth in real estate? Whether it's, a normal client or investor client, I love the underlying theme. You're an investor yourself. I love your perspective. Nicole, I am thrilled to have you on here. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I'll give you guys a plug. If you need any lending needs, reach out to Nicole. She's had some big change the last couple months, working in a whole new bank, new lending options that I don't know the details about, but we'll get some more as we go out this process. So definitely make sure you check out Nicole and her team. And last but not least, this is going to be a brand new face for many of you on the webinar is Aaron Clinkscales. So Aaron started working with us about 90 days ago. And he came on board with the mission of helping us to really build out the portfolio analysis process. So dissecting what a lot of us are doing in the way we analyze properties and kind of being the bridge between what we're doing and the property llama software, help actually make it a very usable tool. So Aaron's background, he was a VP at JP Morgan Private Bank, and he worked on the portfolio management and analytics. So he has a non-real estate background. He's done some real estate investing himself, but he brings a different perspective. It's been phenomenal. Aaron, I'm thrilled to have you on here as well, man.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. So now we're going to jump into some quick items to cover. We got the 5 webinars scheduled. We're on the first one. You guys hopefully know about the rest. Definitely listen to this one first. The other ones do build upon it. If you can't make them live, don't stress. They're recorded. We'll put the recordings in the coursework page, and you should get a bunch of automated emails too with all the follow-up links. If any troubles, reach out to us. And a couple of very important course resources is we have put together a resource page. And this is a hub that we can just have the slides, some notes, links, resources, the webinar recordings, upcoming ones, and just have it be a catch-all. So we'll email out this link, or you can use a QR code there. We're using a platform called Notion. It's basically Google Drive on steroids. So it's a really great way to organize it. So we'll get plugged into that. We also put together a private Facebook group. And so everyone go on there and just have a place to post questions and, interact. So join it. I know some people are on Facebook. If you're not, don't stress about it. You will not lose any important information. The videos, all the content will still be available. But if you want to do some extra networking and Q&A, come join us with the Facebook group, please. Now, here's the most important resource to get plugged into is Property Llama. And this is a software that we started developing about 1.5 years ago. And it was to do exactly this, to plug in people's rental portfolio, plug in their real estate investments, and ultimately create like what I would say our dream real estate investors dashboard. There's lots of great tools out there for looking at personal finances, for your bank accounts, for stocks and bonds. But there's nothing really great out there for real estate, especially when you look at the portfolio level. Lots of stuff to analyze the deal, but nothing to do. And hey, you bought a property 5 years ago and it's tripled in value. What do you do with it?
Now what?
So we have the software, and it is just taken way more traction than I ever expected. The tech team, Richard Alona, their team have done an amazing job. Thank you guys. You guys are crushing it. And so everyone go in here, go create your free account. You can go to propertyllama.com, scan the QR code. We'll send out the link. But you'll want to create an account on there and upload your properties. Now, a couple things about the software. As we go out there and learn from other investors, other people, we can go in there and actually update the software for best practices. With that said, we'll probably run into a couple speed bumps with tech issues along the way. It is still a software that's in development. We're going to officially launch it next year. If you have any tech issues, just go to the chat box in there, plug it in there, and the team will get you sorted out. But as far as the resources, aside from the webinars, this is your most important tool in the toolbox. Now we move on to the fun stuff. Kind of getting over the overview. This is a 5-step framework that we have put together that I'm going to kind of take my portfolio through. I'm also curious to hear Lon's, Nicole's process and framework for analyzing stuff, because we all do it. We all do it very well, but have our own spin on there. So step 1, I like to review and realign goals with investors. Everyone has goals, goes out there and buys a property, then buys another property, hopefully, and on and on and on. A couple years later, market changes, life changes, kids change, business change, all that stuff. And I think it's the most important thing before you actually look at your portfolio, come back and revisit your goals and know where you want to go. Because all real estate is, it's just a vehicle to get you from here to where you want to go. I think we all agree real estate is an amazing vehicle to do that. That's where we're all in the webinar. So we'll start there. Then the second step is have a holistic view of your portfolio. And that is like the global view. We often look at our properties individually. We don't look at them in an aggregate as we have all, 20 properties stacked together. And that's just because, it's hard to do with spreadsheets. So that global view gives you a different perspective on what options you have with your portfolio, and also helps you from the big picture. Is your portfolio in alignment to get to your goals? That is what matters. Step 3 is go through and analyze each individual investment, especially rental properties. There's so much stuff to analyze and look at. And then step 4, explore opportunities. Because once we know your goals, once we look at the big picture and we go through every property, there's opportunities. And there's also things that make sense for your life and your portfolio. So we'll discuss those. And most important thing is to walk away with a clear plan on what you're going to do and know the next steps. Even if it's going to be, hey, I'm going to sit here and just hold for 6 months. Great. That's perfect. Or you might sell a property, refi a property, buy a new property. It doesn't matter. But what are your steps? So you have clarity. And then you can also loop in your team as well, whether it's your spouse, your business partners, your agents, your lenders. They all know as well, so they can help you get to your goal. So kind of jumping into my goals. Here's how I put my profile. I'm still in the accumulation phase, so I'm growth focused, not income focused. I need more assets to get the goals I want.
And you have plenty of current day income, so you don't need to rely on this for paying the bills today.
Exactly.
That's a big differentiator for a lot of people.
Talk about that for a second.
All right. So if you're closer to retirement and you're going to be quitting your job and you need real estate to provide income now, then you're more income oriented where you need the cash flow from the property just to be able to go buy bread and milk at the grocery store. But if you have a great job and you're just trying to build your portfolio to be able to retire in 5, 10, 15 years, growth will get you a lot faster than income will.
Yeah. And it's interesting because usually the higher the growth, the less cash or less income you have.
Almost always.
So there's always a give and take on there.
And usually the income funds have no growth whatsoever, but they're good for current day income. So it's always a trade-off.
Yeah. Or buying properties in the Midwest classically. Hey, great cash flow.
Good example.
Appreciation is
Not
pretty
much.
marginal.
Yep. Good example.
I'm busy. I've got 2 young girls, 3 and 5. I also run multiple businesses. So I am busier than I would like to be. I would say my risk tolerance is medium. But I honestly don't know how to define risk tolerance in real estate investing. I'd be curious. Do you guys have any way to, like, any rules of thumb used to, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but this is just my ongoing questions. How do you measure risk in real estate?
It's more from my perspective when I'm sitting across the table from a buyer or a possible investor, because I work with so many young investors in the sense of young in their experience, not young in age. So a lot of times it starts with their gut. Right? It's like, that makes me feel uncomfortable. I can't lose money. I can't overexpose myself. So we'll go through, what do you have in reserves? How much do you have in savings? How much money do you have available for this specific investment or this venture, to parse that out and not think of, I'm putting my entire portfolio into this, but I'm putting a part of it. And I can expose that. Now, the reality of losing all of that money is relatively low, but you could have volatility. You could have volatility in the value, volatility in the income. You could have vacancy. So you have to be able to plan for those things. And so some people just want to stay close and they want to buy single family homes. I know a single family home. I own a single family home. I want to stay in Denver because I can see it. Others want to do small apartment buildings or out of state, or starting to look at alternatives that will provide better income or better opportunities.
Well said.
I love it. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. I was having lunch with a commercial lender a couple of days ago, and I asked him, what interesting projects are you working on recently? And he said, I've got this guy buying this warehouse who's going to fill it out with golf bays and a bartender and make it into like a social club. To me, that's a very high risk project because it's the first time I've ever heard of it. Sounds intuitively like a good idea. I have no idea if it's going to work or not. To me, that would be like outside of my boundaries of what I would want to do from a risk standpoint. On the polar opposite of that, like if you're a first time investor, and we might have some guys like that on the call today, you're thinking about getting started with having your first rental property, you could buy like a small condo, a small house. You probably own a house now, so you're familiar with what a house is and how to maintain it. If it doesn't work out, you'll be able to sell it pretty easily. That'd be super low risk. It's easy to understand, and there's a lot of exit strategies if you're wrong. So that's like one way to think about risk. The other might be is just what's your personal experience doing something. If you want to be an active investor and you've never developed anything from scratch, you've never even hired a contractor to renovate a kitchen, to go build 10 townhomes might be more than you want to do on your first project. That might be high risk for you, not high risk for me. So it'll depend on your status of what you've done in the past and kind of just how similar is this project to other projects in the marketplace? Is it unique or is it like just pretty typical?
And I love that you brought up the single family home or the townhome or the condo. The 1 to 4 units is residential, so it easily can be purchased and sold.
Yeah.
So very low risk when it comes to exit strategies.
Very liquid market, easy to get a lender to look at it, understand what to do with it.
Yeah. And Aaron, I know you're
absolutely.
But jump in from your perspective as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that I think many of those aspects are the qualitative aspects of your risk, right? So whether or not you're going to be good at executing, a different strategy, but I think one thing that becomes very helpful is just the quantitative aspect. So that naturally comes down to, can I service my debt for X amount of periods if I experience a downside risk, or if I have vacancies for X amount of months? Understanding how your ability to service that debt and ensure you don't have defaults is, I think, a key component of measuring your risk.
I agree. And here's a great comment from Christopher. This is not me, but another Christopher in the comments here. He says, I think risk is very poorly defined in public. Normally, risk is conflated with certainty. For example, stocks are considered risky because the return is uncertain. Treasury bonds are considered safe because the return is certain. However, your return is certain to be negative compared to inflation.
Right.
So very well said.
I love it.
And so I agree. I mean, the way I look at it, my two rules of thumb are, do I have enough cash to get through the bad times? And if it makes me lay awake at night at 2 a.m. stressing about it, no, I've done that in the past.
Don't want to.
And those are kind of my two barometers. And it's so interesting because other people, I'm like, oh, I don't care about that. Other people, oh my gosh, that would stress them out and practically cause divorce. Don't do that.
Yeah, your spouse has to have a risk tolerance that's kind of compatible with yours, or else you have to take the lesser of your two risk tolerances, or else you're not going to have a very happy marriage.
Yeah. So I'm very fine with leverage, but my goal is to offset that risk with 6 months cash, 6 months plus of cash reserves. Because a lot of things I've seen and talking to people that went through the 2008 meltdown, those that survived and those that didn't, the big difference was cash in the bank to float it.
Yep.
Not a HELOC, not a line of credit, but cash in the bank.
Well, and a lot of people, though, will use that as a stopping point if they don't have it yet. And depending on how much you're jumping in, if it's just your first investment, it's a single family or it's a condo, something that you'll probably be able to rent out quickly, that you're going to get rent income before you have to make your first mortgage payment. So you're already baked into having at least 1 month just by purchasing the property. And then having a goal, knowing the cash flow on that investment, how much can you continue to put into that account to create that? Because when I first started in my first one, I did not have 6 months in cash liquid. Now I had it in my 401k, so I could take it out as with a penalty, but then we built up over it. And now with 24 doors, my husband and I have 12 months liquid in other accounts that are giving us a little bit of money, but they allow me to sleep well at night.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's it took me years to understand that, like the sleep test of it. Well, actually, years to learn to have enough cash in the bank. When I was in my 20s, I didn't always do that. And to really value sleep.
Yeah, I started the same way. I think that'd be a common theme for almost everybody on this webinar is that, you're kind of cash thin when you get started, and that's okay as long as you've got the right parameters and guardrails around it.
That's what I do. Okay, I got a Roth IRA, I got a 401k. Worst comes to worst, hey, I'll pull some money out and pay a few bucks in penalties and taxes, but I won't foreclose on property.
Right.
From a macro perspective, I have learned, before I got into real estate, I spent 10 years doing day trading, Forex trading, foreign currency trading, and I really stunk at both. And so I realized I cannot time the market. I can't time it from an hourly. I can't time it from a daily. I can't time it from a yearly. So I have quit trying to time anything. I very much have a dollar cost average mentality.
I love it.
And that is basically like, I don't care too much what the market is doing, unless it's absolutely crazy. I'll pump the brakes for a couple months. But I look at, hey, do I have enough cash to go in there, buy the investment, enough cash to have my reserves, and is my overall financial position in a good enough spot? If it is, hey, go forward with it. So that's my overall mentality. So it takes my emotions out of it. And I like that. And I've also realized this a couple of years, I have no desire to go out there and be a real estate investment operator. I don't want to be fix and flipping. I don't be out there walking with properties with contractors, figuring out that stuff. I'm not good at it. I don't enjoy it. So I don't want to do it. And so once I realized that, I actually started having more fun and more success. So my goals is growth. I want to maximize return and not income. However, I don't want to be negative income focused overall. If there's a specific project, I have some tolerance on there, but overall things need to pay for themselves and make a few bucks. And I want to continue to invest more following the dollar cost average strategy. I did scale back this year with my investments with the market shift. That's just obviously with the market. And also, all my businesses are real estate related. So I have a lot more exposure to that. So I want to be very, very cash heavy from an investment perspective and also from a business perspective as well. And I actually started moving some of my cash that's 3 months or greater into some lower lower risk, liquid income generating investments, some I bonds, short term income fund with Ironton. And that's also because things are actually paying some interest now as well.
Finally.
So it makes sense when it made no sense last couple of years.
No,
Oh.
I was clearing my throat, but I do want to actually lean into the dollar cost averaging, especially right now, because you talked about staying cash heavy, which I think is huge. The only people that lost money during the downturn last time were the people that had to sell, as you mentioned, and having enough cash to be able to protect those assets, but also not trying to time the market. There's so much conversation today about, I want to wait until the bottom falls out. I want to wait until the prices get to their lowest. I want to wait until the interest rates get to their lowest. Like waiting for the bottom, it's like trying to catch that bouncing ball at the very ground. You're not going to do it. It's going to bounce back up again before you can. And the issue with this kind of market, we have so much of a pent-up demand, both from investors, first-time home buyers, and those first-time move-up buyers, that when the prices do hit the bottom and when interest rates do go down, you're going to have a lot of demand coming out. You will have missed your opportunity to negotiate some incredible deals. I have investors out there buying right now,
Right.
It's a
because
great time.
they know
Right.
they can get a deal and then refinance the rate next year.
Yep, exactly.
And I just lost my train. Oh, the other thing, I agree with you on that, because people, I want to wait, but no one takes consideration, what are interest rates doing? Oh, great. The property is $500,000 now, or was last year at a 4% interest rate. Well, now it's maybe $450 at 7% interest rate. Well, what's that monthly payment do? And there's a lot of other factors and just price involved as well.
A lot to it.
There's a lot to it.
All right. So
Yeah, and I think instead of trying to time the market, one of the key aspects is an investment is good when it meets your criteria, right? So you've established from your goals exactly what you want. If a property makes sense for you, an investment actually makes sense for you right now, then it's actually a good investment, right? Instead of trying to compare what you might be in, the next 6 months or 12 months, because we can't time the market. If it makes sense for you, then and it's within line of your criteria, then it's a good one for you now.
I just have to throw another comment on here from Christopher. He says, give me those sweet, sweet I bonds. So thank you for the humor in there. We may have to have you on the panel here, Christopher. All right. So moving into the second step of the 5-step framework, that's my goals. That's my profile. And here's kind of how I've broken down my real estate portfolio. My active real estate, I have 5 rentals that are in Denver, 2 condos, a house with an ADU, a 4-plex, and I'm a minority owner in an office building. I have my primary residence, which I don't treat as an investment property, but it's always good to look at because it's a piece of real estate, and often it is a great source of equity and about the cheapest debt you can ever get. And the third is passive investments. So a year or 2 ago, I switched over to a solo 401k, which is like a self-directed 401k, and started doing some syndications and fund investments. And then this year, now working with Ironton, I started having some, I don't know how to say this, but after-tax dollars.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
After-tax dollars into some more syndications and funds as well. So that's my global view. And then we'll kind of go through each one of those buckets in a little more detail. So here's a screenshot from Property Llama. And this is the global view of those 5 rental properties. And this shows an aggregate of everything adds up. So I'll kind of go through and just read some of the numbers and kind of go through. I'm going to read the numbers and actually have Lon, Aaron, and Nicole first, see what they look at, and I'll see what I look at. So about $2.4 million valuation, just under $1 million in equity, about $120,000 in net operating income, about $35,000 a year in cash flow. I'm at about a 61% loan to value, and I have about a low 5% cap rate average across all 5 of those properties. So I don't know who wants to start first, but when you guys look at this, who wants the hot potato on this one?
Sure.
And so I basically, I told everyone to show up today. I sent the slides out last night, and I say, guys, you have to show up. I'm gonna put you in the hot seat, look at some numbers.
Yep.
I want to hear your gut reaction. So that is how these guys came prepared.
So I help a lot of investors out with this analysis, and your numbers look a lot better than most of them that I see, in that if you bought a property, say in 2012 as a condo, it's probably tripled in value. And if you haven't refinanced it, not only has it tripled in value, but you've also paid off a decent chunk of the mortgage. So the loan to value on that, may have started at 75%, and maybe now you're at 18%. So without any leverage, it's hard to make a decent amount of money in real estate. So you're at 62% loan to value. which is really good. We want to see something ideally in the 60s, and the closer you get to 75, the better.
Why do you say that 60 to 75% range?
Well, you don't want to over lever because if you get too much leverage, the property may not cash flow. And that was one of your guiding principles on your earlier slide. But you don't want to be too low either. So really one of the big engines for creating wealth is, let me just define cap rate first, and I'll tell you what the engine is. So the cap rate, if you're not familiar with that, is if we just take the rents, we have a vacancy allowance, we take out our operating expenses, that generates some sort of cash flow from the operations of the rental property. If you didn't have a mortgage on it, if you took that cash flow and divided it by the market price today, that's today's cap rate. So it basically, like, you could think about it like return on investment without leverage. So if you can borrow money for less than your cap rate, you will create wealth over time. So historically, what's happened is that we could buy rental properties in Denver like on a 6.5 or a 7 cap, and we could borrow at 5. So there's a 2-point spread. The more leverage you have when there's that spread, the more wealth you'll create. The challenge we have right now is that a lot of properties we can buy in the market at the moment are in the low 5s, but I'm borrowing at 7. So I have inverted leverage. So it's not attractive to buy a property right now because I can't get it to cash flow. It's a very frustrating situation that a lot of investors are in. So anyway, I'm encouraged by you that you've got properties that you bought a while back at a low basis. You've still got a decent amount of leverage, probably about the right amount. And your cash on cash returns like a healthy number. It's like, I see a lot of these, they say 3, yours says 7. That's like pretty good.
And someone asked what COC is, and that's cash on cash return.
And the only thing I would add to that, you're much more analytical on than I probably ever will be, as far as your understanding of the metrics, and the way in which you work with investors is brilliant. Tons of respect. My thing is more of a mom, a business owner, a wife. I'm trying to secure a retirement for my family. I've got 5 of us, not 100. I don't have an investment pool or funds.
Right.
I have 5 people that I have to get across the finish line.
Right.
With something in leftover when I go, so that I can give it to my kids. Or maybe, we always joke that I want to spend the last penny on my deathbed, right? And they can figure it out for themselves. But along the way, we've helped them purchase their own investment properties and do this. So I'm looking less at cap rate personally. This looks extremely healthy to me. When I look at the loan to value, my only thought is your age. So I immediately, one of the very first questions I ask when people sit down is, how old are you?
I'm 40.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how much money do you have now? What are your goals? How much money do you want to have in retirement? And seeing that kind of loan to value at age 40 is fantastic. I'd want to see something lower if I was talking to somebody who's in, who is 58, 63.
Yep.
Because at that point, you want to really get it to the point where it's 100% cash flow, because now I'm just maintaining my personal retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I've kind of viewed it as, going back to like stocks and bonds. When you're younger, you usually have a very high stock allocation, lower bond. And as you get older, more bonds,
Absolutely.
less stocks.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the same thing with LTV in real estate is, high LTV is the equivalent to, I'd say, like a high stock allocation.
Right.
And then going down
that.
to a lower LTV as you hit your goals and want to de-risk.
Because just had a conversation this morning with somebody asking, should I use the equity in my primary home to then purchase additional properties? And the answer is, it depends. Right?
That's right. It does depend a lot.
Yes. Your age, your goals, how much you have exposed. And then, interestingly enough, as a primary home, you also have the opportunity to do a reverse mortgage down the road. So you can still use that leverage going into your retirement years, use a reverse, and then continue to create opportunities investing.
Yep.
So a couple questions on here. Christopher says, do you track DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, and Property Llama? We debated that, and we don't have it displayed because that is a commercial lending term that throws a lot of people a big curveball. So it's one of those things we're trying to figure out what's the right information versus overwhelming someone. And DSCR is I'd say more advanced metric, but a very important one.
Maybe when you build your user profile, you could have the user self-identify if I'm sort of like an entry-level user or a more advanced user, and then maybe something like DSCR would be like great for an advanced, but not for someone who's a beginner.
Ooh, I like that. Aaron, another good note to take for Property Llama.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that one as well.
Another question from Ashley. She says, maybe because it's the Denver area, I assume, but what's the cash on cash you were targeting if you were buy today? I'm not a huge cash on cash person, so that's not one of the main metrics I look when I buy a property. I'm much more of like, hey, what's the overall growth return, and ideally like, hey, buying a place that's kind of in that transitioning neighborhood so it can catch some wave of that. My biggest thing is, hey, if the property can pay for itself and make a few bucks,
That's probably good enough.
I'm generally happy enough right
Yeah.
now. I don't want a negative 5%, but a couple percent cash on cash return, I'm fine with that.
So that's a really great question, and you're probably not the only person on the webinar who's asking it. So just as a quick aside, we generate wealth 4 ways with investment real estate that we own. So there's the cash on cash return. That's sort of like the tip of the iceberg you can easily see. There's the appreciation over time, which usually is the lion's share of the wealth creation. The tenant is making your mortgage payments, so you're chipping away at that mortgage balance a tiny bit every month, but it really accumulates over time. And lastly, there's some tax benefits, what I won't go into here. We do have separate recordings of webinars where we talk about those 4 wealth drivers in a lot of depth. So if you're newer to this, I'd really encourage you to listen to one of those webinars, and it'll really broaden your perspective about how to think about how you're achieving your financial goals with real estate.
And if you want depreciation, I think it's webinar 4 in the series. We're doing a deep dive into depreciation, both from like active rentals and a fund perspective.
Yep.
So, and there's some really, really like cool stuff to do with depreciation. And speaking of those 4 returns on the right-hand side there
they are.
screenshot, we've got the 4 of them. One is in dollars and then one's percent. And that percent, we basically took that $180,000, which is the estimated return for the next 12 months of appreciation, debt pay down, cash flow, and depreciation, and divided that by total equity. That's about a 20% return.
That's great.
Is what we looked at.
That's really good.
And you said it a few minutes ago, Lon, but I want to highlight this. The key point in all this analysis going forward is use current numbers. It doesn't matter that you bought that condo for a 9 cap 5 years ago.
That's gone.
As Lon says, when you renew a lease or when you refinance, you are essentially repurchasing the property, saying, hey, I'm going to use this for another year or 2 years as an investment. So use current numbers. And these numbers are pretty darn current within, a month. And, the valuations
really
might
good.
be a little shaky as well.
That's all right.
But use current numbers, guys. So moving on to my primary residence. This is just a very zoomed in screenshot of Property Llama. Ignore the negative NOI, the negative cash flow. It's kind of pointless for
there's
primary.
no rent.
Yeah.
If you were paying yourself rent, it'd be a positive number.
Yes. And that house, I got a HELOC on there last year. I got appraised for just over $1 million. And then I have about $440,000 in equity in there. So I have a 30-year fixed at 2.5 that I got about 2 years ago when everything cratered because of COVID. And like a lot of people,
you say you're not good at timing, but
that was perfect timing.
That was okay. I got lucky on that one. So like a lot of people, I don't want to replace that cheap debt.
No, you want to keep it.
But that is where a HELOC or a second position comes into play. So I have that, and I did put a HELOC on there. And I put 100% combined LTV HELOC on there. I'm not using it all, but I have enough faith in my responsibility that I can be smart enough and have it.
Yep.
So I was like, hey, if you're gonna give it to me, I'll take a bank.
Sure.
And so I'm about a 56% loan to value on there. So you guys mentioned, got options there for pulling equity. The third leg to my current one.
Yeah, Grayson, that's
go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think that's an excellent strategy for a lot of people right now.
Good.
If you have a very low to value, you basically can look at this as being, somewhat of a piggy bank, but then it becomes a blended rate. Because the key concern that I think comes up naturally as well, if I get a HELOC, I'm going to borrow at 7 or 8%, right? But if you take the weighted average of what this 2.5 30-year fix plus, the 7% that you get from your HELOC, pulling another $200,000 out, you're going to end up having, let's call it about a 3.5%, 3% now interest rate as a blended rate. So it makes it look less concerning. I'm pulling a HELOC out with a much higher interest rate.
The only thing I would say, as far as the counter argument to the HELOC, is that they do have risk and exposure, right? So you really do have to maintain your own budget to make sure that you're paying that HELOC off in a regular basis, because we're still seeing the Fed is raising the Fed rate, which does directly impact the HELOC rates, indirectly the 30-year fix, because that's a whole nother conversation. But that HELOC rate, interest rate will continue to go up. Your monthly payment, interest only, will continue to go up. And so many people get to the end of that 10-year draw period and the balance is the same. Like they didn't pay a single thing down and now they're strapped. Now it's locked in at whatever the market rate is on a 20-year fixed. And now they have to do something that they didn't want to do, or decisions that they didn't want to make. So definitely managing it like a serious debt. Like, this is tied to your home, protected. And then many banks do have the option to lock it down, to change it and convert it into a HE loan from a HELOC. And that might be an option, especially if you draw a big portion of it out, you might want to lock that down.
Great point.
Makes sense.
And we got a lot of questions in the chat here. I'm going to respond to a lot of these towards the end. I want to get through the portfolio analysis here. Last pillar here is a passive. Like I said, my solo 401k. I spent years looking and talking with investors about headed self-directed IRAs and looking at buying rental properties through self-directed IRA. A lot of times just those numbers like never got me excited. Debt's a lot more expensive with non-recourse loans.
Less leverage.
40%, 45% down payments, and usually a point or two above the going rate. And I was like, well, it's not that exciting. Like, and with all the extra rules and EBITDA, well, I'm not going to deal with it. But I did see the opportunity as I learned more. I think self-directed IRAs and 401ks are great for like private lending, for investing in syndications, for investing in funds. So I've got some of those investments in there. And my after-tax dollars, this year I put some into NDF5 with Ironton, Samuel Drive, which is a local value-add apartment deal with Ironton and Terrence Stoll at Verico. And then I moved some of the money, as mentioned earlier, into some of my reserves. I'm starting to put some over into the short-term income fund, which pays on what, 6, 7, 8%?
Between 7 and 8.
7, 8%. So just getting some, it's liquid, 30 to 60 days, but still making some money. So I've started putting some money into there, and I do consider that an investment now because it is one.
Yeah.
So before we get into individual assets, any comments or questions on the big picture, holistic view?
It looks great.
Agreed.
I wish everybody had this sharp a focus on what they're trying to accomplish.
Well, that's the goal of this.
That's why we're doing this today.
Yes, that's what you guys want to walk away from. All right, so I'm going to go through here. I got 5 properties in here. We'll probably, spend a lot of time on 1 or 2 slides, go over like the key points, because there's definitely some metrics you can look at on here. So, and these are in no particular order, but this is a property I bought about a year and a half ago. I used a 15% down loan, 30-year fixed at 4.25. And back then, people were like, oh, 4.25, that's so high. Well, I put down 15%, right? All perspective. It's appreciated probably a little bit. So I'd say about $500,000 value. And so in ADU, there's the main house and then the accessory dwelling unit in back. So it's basically like 2 units or a horizontal duplex. About $3,200 in combined rent. You can see I've got a loan balance about $390. Annual cash flow is about $3,000. Not much. That's a 3% cash on cash. Like I said, I'm not a cash on cash guy. But here's what's interesting to me. I've got a 5.4 cap rate, which is, I'm very happy with that for a single family. But while the cash flow is low and the cash on cash is low, look at these bottom 2 things. Return on equity is about in the low 40%. And that's also because I'm highly levered in the high 70s in LTV. So, panel, when you guys see this, let you digest this. I'm kind of curious the way you process this and what your brains do.
If it's easy to run, that's a keeper for 5 years. I wouldn't touch anything with it. So the loan to value, since it's relatively new, is relatively high. So there's no opportunity to refinance. It is positive cash flow. So you've got enough left over. You could save some in reserves every month for maintenance, or if some other project you might want to do, if, maybe renovate a kitchen next time a tenant turns over, just so you can raise the rents up a little bit. You'd be able to self-fund all of it. This is fantastic.
I agree. I think this is a fantastic base hit. Like, it's not a home run. It's not a small apartment building, but you had 2 doors. I talk to people a lot about looking for multiple door opportunities, whether it's an ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit in the backyard. Maybe you're renting out the garage. Maybe it has a downstairs basement mother-in-law suite you can use. This is an extremely low risk investment with additional door opportunities on rental. It's a square base hit. It's fantastic.
I love it.
I'm so glad to find someone else uses baseball terms, analogies for investing, because I use them, but you use them too. But my whole strategy, I can build a lot of wealth off of base hits and doubles.
Oh,
I know
absolutely.
In Little League, when I used to swing for the fences, I'd strike out a lot.
I'd strike out a lot.
I don't want to strike out a lot in my real life, and I've got my wife and kids. I don't want to strike them out either.
There's really no reason to take risk with real estate investing. If you just hit singles and doubles like this, you're going to have a fantastic retirement with very little stress. Later on, we may find an opportunity, maybe not with your portfolio, but with ones that we look at frequently, where someone did buy something a while back. They've never refinanced. They're sitting on a huge equity position. We talk about there might be an opportunity for you to refinance this, take some of the cash, and buy another property. This is something else I'd love to see them buy.
Yep. Question for you, Nicole. Ashley says, where did I find a 15% down loan? All mine required 20 to 25% down.
I bet you know all about this.
I know that one. Interestingly enough, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, you only need 15% down. It does come with mortgage insurance, and the interest rate, as you mentioned, is a little bit higher. Oh, that high 4.25% that you've got on
I
this
know,
one.
horrible, huh?
It's horrible. But it is typically going to be just usually an eighth higher than the market rate at 20% down.
Oh, it's That's
Yeah,
not bad.
it's an eighth to a quarter. It's very close, 15. And then you have the mortgage insurance on top of that, or you could buy the mortgage insurance out. We use it a lot. I don't typically steer investors to it, but if somebody needs more in reserves, so I was helping somebody that she's become a dear friend. Her father passed. She ended up buying 7 properties. That 7th property was tight on what she had left. You know, many investors say, well, if I had more cash, I'd buy more properties. I'm like, no, you can't, because at some point you run out, because I need reserves. So we squeak through with a 15% down to leave a little bit more money in her reserves to make her qualify.
Yeah, and actually, when I bought this, I did an interesting analysis of 15 versus 20 versus 25% down, and like the extra down payment doesn't make that big difference in cash flow.
No.
And I'd rather have
And the return on equity is way better.
Oh, yeah.
The less you put in for cash, the better the ROE is going to be.
And I'd rather keep like $30,000 or $40,000 cash in the bank for extra reserves,
Love it.
or that's a half a down payment on the next property.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. I love this one.
Yeah. So like Nicole said, that's a common product. I think just for single family homes, right? 15% down.
It is. It's a single unit. And this is a single unit because the ADU doesn't count as a second unit.
Oh, nice.
And Christopher said, can you legally rent both the main house and the ADU to separate parties in Denver?
Yeah.
Depends where you're at.
It depends on where you're at. It also depends on zoning. So it depends. This one, yes. And this one's actually in Adams County. It's up north.
Oh, yeah, no problem there.
Really quickly, though, on the short-term rentals, because a lot of the rules around the short-term rentals, anything over 30 days is considered long-term rent. So you definitely want to check that out if you're looking at something like an auxiliary dwelling unit, because you very well might be able to do the month-to-month rentals.
Yep. And if you want more details, last year with Stacy, one of my agents, we did a webinar going through zoning codes and ADUs. If you ping me, I can find that for you.
So that's unincorporated Adams. That might be a great short-term rental too.
Yep. So short-term rentals are not the extra money right now. I may, but that's an option. But for me, that's not my profile right now. So this is a condo I bought a couple years ago, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo in Aurora. Nothing fancy, great rentals. I think I bought it at a 7% cap rate. It's now, 4.5.
Is that Robinwood?
Yep.
Okay. I had a couple out there.
Yep. A lot of investors. I feel like it's a rite of passage. So I think I bought for like 190, values 275.
Solid.
Loan balance is 150. It cash flows $5,000 a year. But you can see here, 4.5 cap rate, LTV is just over 50%. And while my cash rate's higher, or my cash flow is higher because I have a lower LTV, my return equity is about half on my other property.
Right.
And so again, this one's got a 30-year fixed at about 3.5%. So those are those numbers. Anyone want to?
I still think that that's solid. The only thing that I would be careful on a condo is any movement in the HOA. So if they're going to increase the HOA and it starts to infringe on your cash flow, you might want to make some decisions on that. But other than that, it's a long-term hold.
Yep. That's pretty solid.
I agree.
I like this.
My plan is to hold this for another couple of years. One comment on here I've not made, as we've done a bunch of portfolio analyses. Guess what? The number one mistake and number one piece of advice we give people: raise your damn rents.
Right.
So this is a little bit below market rent right now.
This is a 3-bedroom for 1950.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that market on the 23?
I think it's like, depending if you have a garage rent's like 2,000 to 2,200 over there now, I think.
Okay. So
based on market
23.
and Section 8. So I would expect 2050, 2,100 if it comes time to renew.
So you could boost your cash flow by 50% just by getting to market the next time it comes up for rent.
Yep.
For lease, rather.
And that's always something that we don't always talk about, but always check your current values and always check what your current rents are. Either go to Rentometer or Zillow or talk to a property manager.
Yep.
So here's the other one. This is actually another condo in the same complex, about the same numbers, slightly different. I bought, I think, a year later, but pretty similar there.
Yep.
The debt's at 3 7/8. So my plan here is to hold this as well. But again, it's the same thing. It's about a 50% LTV, While my cash flow is actually better than my house with ADU, my growth, which I look at return on equity, my growth is about half, maybe
Right.
less than half.
Mm-hmm.
Next property is a fourplex in Westminster. I bought this a couple years ago. I did a 1031 from another property, actually another condo into this. I've had this for 3 or 4 years now. About $1 million current valuation. Rents are about $6,300. My loan balance is about $580, which puts me on about a 55% loan to value. And so it's about 5% cap rate, 7% cash on cash return. But I have just under $500,000 in equity in this property. Maybe a little bit less depending on the market, but about $500,000 in equity. And you can see that high equity position gives me a 15% return on equity,
Right.
which is nothing exciting as it kind of trails
It's
down
fine.
to lower. Yeah. But if it gets down to 10, that's where it starts. So I'm like, if it gets to like 10%, that's kind of like stock market range for me.
Right.
And I personally want to outperform the stock. If I have to deal with tenants and toilets, I want to make more money than the stock market.
So, I mean, for the guys on the webinar, this is one of the better portfolios I've looked at, because most of them I look at, I see like your return on equity has been between 15 and like 40. I'm usually seeing things like between 8 and 11. So yeah, between 8 and 11, like you said, I could do the stock market, not have to deal with the property manager, not have to be on the loan, not have any of the risk and the headache. But at 15, like it's a sizable enough improvement over the stock market that I wouldn't modify it much. So congratulations, you're the outlier.
Thank you. Well, I've been to a few of your classes.
And it also assumes that your chooser's not broken. My
Right.
stock market chooser is broken. Like, I'm not getting 10 on mine. I wish I was. So luckily I've got somebody hired that his chooser's a little bit better, but I love the stability
Right,
and the
yeah.
consistency of real estate. See, even if that dropped to 10 to 11, I think I'd still do this. And especially as you get older, that number doesn't mean as much because yes, you're going to have a lot more equity than otherwise you might want to hold at age 40.
Yep.
So just to pretend like if this one did say 10% return on equity, Chris and I recorded a webinar about a week ago where we did an analysis of, well, if I kept it as it is over the next 10 years, what kind of wealth do I generate? If I got a HELOC on it, like you have to go to a commercial bank probably to get a HELOC for something like this. But if I reinvested the HELOC in like a fund like ours, Fund 6, or bought another property, what would that look like? If I sold it outright, paid the capital gains, did the stock market, what wealth creation in 10 years? Or what if I sold it, paid the capital gains, and put it into like our Fund 6? What would that mean in 10? And we did all the comparisons of all the choices. So whenever you look at one of these, like you've got from Property Llama, if you're like at 11 or below on the return on equity, that's where I would do that analysis. Above 11, I wouldn't waste my time because just staying the course is probably going to be the right answer for at least a couple of years.
And again, my plan is I'm going to hold this for another year or two, and I'm going to reevaluate
Just
every year or
reevaluate it.
so.
Yep, perfect.
Because if that return on equity starts dropping low, that's kind of where it bugs me. But of course, you have to take in all the other factors as well. And plus, this is in Westminster, which has a rental application, and it took me like 2 years to get finally through all the inspection process. So I'm like, 2 months ago, it finally got stabilized. I actually want to enjoy it for a little bit before I do anything. Knock on wood.
You're not getting these great returns for free.
No.
Just taking some sweat.
Also making my property manager work for it as well. Thank you, Eric, by the way.
He deserves it.
Oh, he deserves a lot of it.
Well, there's a good one.
Yeah, so a whole lot to talk about on this one. This is or I don't think so. Let me take that back. This is, I said, I own about a 10% stake in this office building. This is a downtown Denver ballpark district. I own about 10%. And while Property Llama doesn't have the features built in there yet for like divvying up your ownership percentage, I just took the value and basically, divided by 10. So I put 10% in there.
That works.
So you can see the high level there. It's about 11% cash on cash return, about a 6% cap rate. So a very solid deal. And so this was attractive from numbers, and also some of the other partners in this building own other buildings on this block. And it's a long-term like land play to hopefully develop the whole block.
Love it.
And so I'd say my partners here are much smarter than me in that aspect. I trusted their judge, like, hey, I'll go along for the ride with you because the numbers make sense now. If this turns development 5 or 10 years, I would love to be a part of that to learn and also, get a big payday.
Love it. That's a great one.
So high leverage. I don't have any control on this property and very little input, so I'm kind of along for the ride, but I like the numbers.
I do too.
All right, so we got about 10 minutes left. And kind of shifting the fourth part, explore opportunities with scenario modeling. Now, this is just some example text images up here because we didn't run any because I wanted to get the panel's feedback, and also running models takes a little bit more time. But this is the stage, once you kind of go with your goals, you look at your global portfolio, you look at your individual investments. Hey, what makes sense? What opportunities do we see? And it might be, hey, well, let's look at, as Lon said, hey, sell us one property and let's run a model for paying capital gains. Let's run a model for a cash out refi and buy another property and see what that does. And it might be then, hey, let's look at across a couple properties and do it. And this is where the software really gets fun because we actually do like multiple properties at once. So the software can do this. We'll talk more about this in future webinars. And also, we still do a lot of stuff with spreadsheets. Like Lon mentioned that spreadsheet a few weeks ago.
Mhm.
We'll post that on here with those recordings. So make sure you explore opportunities from individual investments, but then come back and see how it not just performs that investment, but how it affects your overall global portfolio. Now, I'm curious from the high level, any big opportunities that you guys see through here or models that you would run?
Oh, from the properties that we looked at?
from the properties
I would usually just start with whichever one has the lowest return on equity, which is almost always the one that has the lowest LTV.
Fourplex.
Yeah, but in your case, like since it's so much above, like 11% is usually about where I start looking at that for return on equity, and you're like way above that. I doubt we'd be able to do much to improve this portfolio.
I mean,
which is great.
Yeah, and I've tried to keep, like I said, I feel like my portfolio is pretty well tuned. But there is an option here. I mean, that's almost $500,000 in equity.
Yep.
I could put a HELOC, or put a second on there.
Yep.
Pull some cash out and refinance. Like I said, I don't want to sell it because the property. I love the location. I love the layout of the property. It's finally stabilized.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to sell this one now too. I'd want to get, if I could get a second line against it with a small local bank, or do you have a product like that?
We don't do the seconds. No.
Yeah.
Although we do standalone seconds on properties to purchase another property. So if you were going to buy another 1 to 4 unit, we could use that and put a second on this one. We just don't do the standalone like if you're coming to us for a HELOC.
Yeah.
But we could do a fixed line on this. And I do agree, especially at your age, if you could turn this into 8 units, get another fourplex with the equity that you have in this, or even 2 fourplexes, depending on how much of that equity you take out. Now you're going to have to leave at least 25% equity in there. Yeah. So you really only have access to about 25%.
So the play might be to work with a local lender like Adam Alleywees, have them find a way to take, say, $250 out of this, and then you could do the concurrent second, the first on a purchase.
Yes.
To get some leverage to go buy another one.
Yeah, and that'd actually.
Well, we can even apply the second on this one to use as the down payment on the other one.
Oh, could we do that?
Yeah, we can do that. So I can do
that again. I'm sorry, I don't understand.
I can do the fixed second on this property to use as a down payment for the next one.
So up to like a combined 75 LTV?
Yes. So if we were taking up to, I can.
Oh,
yes.
fantastic.
Sorry. I just don't do the standalone HELOCs.
Gotcha.
So
but
if
we're going to go buy another property.
Sorry. So if I pulled out, say, $200,000, which would be about 20%, pull out $200,000, you can help me pull it out as long as you get $200,000 to go buy another 1 to 4 unit and use that $200,000 as down payment.
Absolutely.
You'd be able to structure 2 separate loans, but quarterback it.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Wouldn't that be like maybe 8% or something? Or what's the rate on that?
Yeah, I mean, the investment properties right now, of course, interest rates are bouncing around.
Right.
We had some good news on Thursday, and hopefully we'll have some consecutive months of good news is what we need. Everybody's like, oh, great, lower rates. Not yet. It's not a trend yet. But yes, no, absolutely. You're looking at about mid-7s to low 8s.
That's not
on
too
an investment property. No.
Yeah, mid-7s, low 8s. And yeah, Nicole, yes, you have to use the second to buy the new property, Wesley. And so that was actually my plan. I'd say like earlier, like, I might pull a second on here. Then interest rates went up and market change, and more just because, my income is so tied to real estate.
Right.
I went way more conservative.
Yep.
If we were in the market last year, I'd be like, pull the equity out, baby, and go reinvest it and buy another property at 4% interest rate. But I said, market changed, and I wanted to, be cognizant of what my business is doing.
Great.
Last step is as you come out here and then, run some scenarios, you write your plan. And I'm a big proponent of actually like writing a plan. That's actually why I love like preparing for a webinar.
Forces you to do the work.
Yeah, it forces me to do it, and forces me to communicate in a written word, which is much different than me thinking about it or telling you about it.
Yep.
I think writing it is much more impactful and carries forward.
Yep.
And this is where you can see here, like right now, this is why it's so important to have like a really good team that you work with. Your agent, your lender, your property manager, everyone, because, oh, hey, I've got this option. Hey, Nicole, about this. Hey, property manager, what about this? Hey, agent, what about this? And so this is where, like, if you can effectively communicate what you're doing, kind of you, the investor stuff, the quarterback between your team, what's going on, but you have to communicate it and get Nicole's input and get my input from my agent, what I can buy next, and then do it. And that's where you can write this plan, take it to your team, and they can look at it from their perspective. And sometimes like, hey, let me hop on a quick call, let me bring you in and my other team members. Can we do a 20-minute phone call together? Yes.
Right.
And so this is why I'm a big fan of this, because you can show it to your team, you can show it to your spouse, your partner, and you can also just come back and revisit as well. So like I said, I'm kind of in like a hold right now from anything major. I'm going to continue some like dollar cost averaging investing into some of the Ironton funds, because I can kind of do small amounts into there, which fits very well for where I'm at personally with the risk tolerance and or with the market and all that. So that is my plan. Any other recommendations or tidbits? Aaron, I know it's hard to jump in remote. Sorry, we don't mean to forget about you, man. You're just not in the room.
It's all good. It's all good. No, I think that one of the most powerful features I really like is the scenario analysis. And I think that, as you're considering your plan and revisiting, as we've identified those opportunities, running those scenarios to kind of help you reassess, I think is one of the most like powerful things you can kind of do to really help you understand the trade-offs between the different decisions on your portfolio. And that in turn gives you this action plan that allows you to kind of like, not only assess the different decisions, but see which ones, are going to be the best opportunity, or if you want to stay the course as you are considering today.
Great. So I want to come back. We got some Q&A. We got a few minutes left. I'll come back and answer those. But in case we go over a few minutes, kind of just to wrap up, we have the webinar next week, same time, Tuesday. So come back and check for that or catch the recording. What I'd recommend everyone do is step one, go enter the properties in your Property Llama account, and then go through that 5-step work, the 5-step framework, the best you can. Enter the properties in there, write down your goals. I mean, I don't think there's any like right way to write down your goals, but that's what worked for me when I shared my profile. So do that and just do the best you can to go through steps, 1 through 3, really. Understand your goals, look at your portfolio, look at your investments. Next week, we'll talk more about running some models and scenarios and do more plans. And then we will send out a link to the software, the student resources pages, and we'll actually put some links in there to like some of those webinars we talked about. Everyone's contact details are in there. A few people have asked for your contact details, Nicole. Real quickly, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
The easiest way is the website. So it's just theruthteam.com, and my last name is spelled RUETH. Yeah. So theruthteam.com.
And so we'll put that in there. Jake, where do we find the framework again? That's in the slide deck here. So we'll send this out.
All the way at the beginning.
Forgot how hard it is with the transitions in there. So there's a 5-step framework. So we'll hang out for a few minutes, answer some questions.
Good.
If you guys have a hard start for 12, feel free to
roll.
roll.
Let's do the questions for sure.
Cool. Whoa, we got some ones in here. So I'm just going to go through some random ones here. A comment from Christopher again said, going back to raising rents, a big mistake I see is when people think they will get better renters if they keep the rent low because the renter will be happy.
Yeah. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Yes. He said, I find the exact opposite is correct. The higher the rent, the higher the quality of the tenant you have. The better jobs, the better they take care of the property. But they do expect better service.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fair.
Yeah, but I think that's a good mentality. Being is like, I don't know. I was amazed when I got into real estate years ago. Some landlords, like, they want to milk every dollar out of there. I'm like, dude, at the end of the day, you're providing a service. Like, keep your customer happy.
Yeah.
Especially when they're living in your $500,000 asset. Don't make them unhappy so they make your property destroyed.
Right.
It's kind of a slumlord way of thinking about it, right? If I keep my expenses low, I keep your rent low, I don't have to deal with you. It's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah, you'll get your so there.
And of course, there's a balance of like, if you have the lease is up, hey, you could raise the market, run another $100, but that causes the tenant turnover. There's vacancy and some turnover costs. You might say, hey, we'll raise it $25 or $50, have a happy medium. So there's always some context in there.
Right.
So always have that discussion, ideally with your property manager 60 days before their lease ends.
Definitely have the property manager help you through that process.
So here's an interesting one. Carl says it's important to remember that the cash flow on this one will help him buy future properties. I'm not
Yes.
sure which property that is on, and I say
All of them.
yeah. But yes, but in the market, the equity and appreciation helped me buy more properties way quicker than the cash flow. Like I'm at like a $30,000 a year cash flow right now, which is great. I love it. It kind of sits in the account and gets recycled. But 30,000, 30,000, 30,000. A couple years now,
Adds
I can
up.
put a down payment, which is great. But if I've had huge appreciation, and this is what you take what the market gives you.
Right.
The Denver market and really the Colorado market gave us appreciation. I'm a big fan of tapping in that sell and trade up, refi or HELOC, take the money out. So yeah, cash flow can, but I think equity, especially in this market, can help you buy a lot more properties faster.
Yep.
And you might use some of that cash.
Yeah, and having that mixture of both.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I was just saying having the mixture of both actually really helps you too, right? Because if you could utilize equity and you know that you have that slight cash flow buffer that you're getting from the properties as well, I think that helps you stay in line with your goal of utilizing higher leverage for growth, but also staying positive cash flow.
Yeah. And also, I want to say positive cash flow because when I send Nicole my tax returns to do a loan, I need to have a decent DTI so she can actually give me a loan.
Right.
Yes.
So so we'll send all these links. So here's a question. Or a statement, I should say. In my opinion, real estate should always have debt on it. If you don't want debt, buy stocks. Stocks have a higher cap rate than real estate. The advantage of real estate is cheap debt. And Lon, I'm going to kind of look at you for that perspective because I've learned from you many analyses of stocks versus real estate. I know you have a very impressive portfolio, and I think you're still pretty well leveraged across it.
I am.
What's kind of can you kind of share your general LTV and thoughts on that as well?
If you and your spouse have the comfort level with having debt, I completely agree with what he said. Not everybody feels that comfortable with debt though. So a lot of people are motivated to pay stuff off as rapidly as possible, and they'll never create as much wealth as the guy who uses the leverage smartly.
And I always what I always found fascinating because you and then Charles Roberts, who was another
it was completely opposite. It was hilarious.
You guys are opposite, but both so successful. I'm like, hey,
there's a lot of ways to do it.
And Charles was buy property, basically never sell and pay the debt off.
Yep.
So he was at this end of the spectrum, and Lon, man, I see you trade properties and re-leverage at the other end of the spectrum. But
right.
Both of you are incredibly successful.
What I do is a whole lot more work than what Charles did. So if you just want to be like efficient, Charles would kill me any day of the week.
But I'm saying that's where it also comes back to like risk tolerance and preference. Like there's no right or wrong.
Yep.
I've had a lot of investors of their portfolios as they've gotten a better portfolio. I've seen some investors kind of like keep, I say like, 25 to half of their, 25% of their properties kind of like debt free and keep the other properties highly leveraged. That's kind of been the way they balance things out. Some properties completely paid off, some very highly leveraged, what I thought was very unique.
Yeah.
But I've never been like run analyses on that. If you guys have seen that or have any thoughts on that.
Yep.
I don't. I would, because I do know too that you want to protect yourself. And I know I have an umbrella policy and we have each one of our properties in its own LLC. And this whole concept of, if somebody does slip and fall and they sue you, they only have access to the equity in the home.
Oh, right.
So having certain ones all paid off and exposing yourself. But if you believe in leverage, having other ones highly leveraged, I'd almost spread that around a little bit more. But
yeah,
but I'm probably closer to Charles than to you.
Nothing wrong with that.
I want to get to the end, have everything paid off, and
right.
just live out the kind of retirement that we've planned. But
right.
I do have some things to learn, I know.
Well, I wouldn't say that. One thing, this would actually be a whole webinar topic in and of itself, is that, a lot of investors struggle amassing the down payment to buy the next property. So we could do a webinar where we talk about how many properties do I need to have to retire? You probably have solved that. So you probably got that number and now you're just trying to pay them off.
Right.
One way to do that is like, if you need 10, let's say, is to go ahead and buy 20. And then when you're like a couple years before retirement, you haven't paid them all off yet, sell the 10 that you like the least, use the cash to pay off the ones that you decided to keep. You'll get there many years faster by doing it that way, but it's a whole hell of a lot more work.
Yeah.
And more leverage along the way. So some people will find that desirable. Some people would hate the idea, but that might be a webinar we could do at some point, getting to what that guy was hinting at.
Ashley, You in the comments today, she said, "I love the llama. I cannot wait to fill it up."
I love it.
You win the comments battle today, Ashley. So thank you.
Thank you for that.
I'm sure that put a big smile on Richard and Alona's and our tech team's face as well.
They put a lot of work into that.
Yes.
I'm
ready to get in there. I don't even want you analyzing my portfolio shirts.
Just one point of view among many.
Oh,
I don't have all the answers.
I've got to get in there.
Yeah, and there was a comment on here I read somewhere and I can't find it. They talked about taking some extra cash flow and putting it down to like prepaying the principal, like adding extra money towards principal balance. I am not a fan of that personally. I'm kind of curious your thoughts, because if my debt's at 3 or 4% or even 7% now,
Right.
why do I want to put $1 to basically get a 7% return?
I could make 17 investing in Fund 6, and then
it's all about the spread.
It's all about the spread.
Yeah. Again,
Yeah.
since I'm in the growth mode and accumulation mode, I want those dollars working for me.
So where the comment would really make a lot of sense is if you've determined that 8 properties is the right number for retirement, and you've got the 8, and now it's the question, like, the sooner I get these things paid off, the sooner I'm retiring, and that's a perfectly okay way to think about it. Then what your comment there was, it makes a ton of sense to me.
Going back up to risk, and we'll have to hop off in about 4 minutes, everyone. George says, how do you all view managing risk in terms of a leverage percentage in a shifting market like now, where some quote unquote experts are talking about an upcoming recession? I don't think, I'll answer first. I don't think there's much difference from what we talked about. You have to look at your own situation, like I did. Hey, I am a business, or own a business in real estate. I am highly exposed to highly interest rates in my investing and also my business. But I think it comes down to still, like, I want a healthy LTV and I still want to keep cash in the bank. To me, the changing market didn't change it more than, you know what? My LTV is going to stay the same. I just keep more cash in the bank. And I'm kind of like slowing down my deployment of it.
Great.
I like that a lot. I mean, I think what we had in the last recession, when the home values fell so much, people had over leveraged. You had 100%, you had an 80-20. I mean, sometimes you even had more than that. You had 110% loan to value. So in that, you're overexposed. You have any vacancy at all, and now you're kind of up a creek without a paddle. So in this game, everybody had to put 15%, 20%, 25%. Yep. The consumer is highly qualified to get the loans today. Most of them still have jobs. We have excess job openings. Yes, there are companies that are laying off, but those people who are typically homeowners are typically still working. And in those situations, we're going to have a lot of stability in America's homes today. Plus the fact that almost 40% of them don't even have a mortgage on them. So all they have to do is stay put.
Yeah.
So I like your idea as far as keeping a little cash in hand, because you don't know what opportunities you're going to present, or just protecting yourself against any vacancies.
Great.
So on that one, I guess I'd say it's a certainty we're going to have a recession. There's no doubt in my mind. It's probably going to be the first half of next year. So if you're worrying about this a little bit, and there's nothing wrong about thinking about this at 2 a.m, we have a really simple financial model. So you can upload it on there as a resource where you can punch in your rents, your expenses, figure out the cash flow, put in your mortgage, and it'll figure out your payment, like how much extra cash do I have left over after my mortgage? So it'll take you 5 minutes to punch the numbers in. Do that. So then build a version of the model that's separate, that's saying, all right, if we go into a bad recession, if I had to cut my rents by 10%, if my vacancy went from 5% to say 12%, and if I also had to like change out a furnace unexpectedly for $4,000, would I have enough cash to feel comfortable? And if the answer is yes, you can stop worrying about it. Like, there's not realistically, you're going to have a scenario worse than that. Mm-hmm. If you are $4,000 short, then save up $4,000. But that's a really easy way to like just put it to bed, and for certain that I am ready. I'm recession ready.
I agree with everything you said, Lon, except don't do it in the spreadsheet. Do it in the Property Llama software.
If Property Llama will do it for you, do it there.
We'll
absolutely.
do that too.
Yeah,
we can help you out. Okay, one last question here, and this was going back to some of the, like, what do we target for cash flow, or what I target. I'm going to look forward to the slide here. I actually, like I said, I don't look at cash flow too much. I'm really focused on NOI. Because to me, NOI is that is future cash flow. Because that is, NOI is your rents minus your vacancy and your operating costs, basically everything with the property except what you pay on your mortgage debt, your principal and interest on there. And so I'm always looking at NOI because that is my future cash flow. If I were to pay the property off, I would have that much more cash flow. So I actually like to look at NOI a lot to see, hey, how much is my NOI increasing on
Yes.
my percent return. So I'm a big NOI fan rather than like cash flow focused.
Okay.
Yeah. Other than that, that is, I know we
Great
have some more
questions.
questions
Wow.
in here.
Really great questions.
Everyone, thank you so much. I'll do my
Mhm.
best to come back and answer some, but always post in the Facebook group. If you have individual questions on investments, on properties, on funds, on lending,
Mhm.
reach out to us. All of our contact details are going to be that Notion document. We'll send that later.
Cool.
And we'll keep adding to it, resources and other questions to kind of make that a hub for everything. But in the meantime, reach out to us. We love talking about this. This is what we do
Absolutely.
for fun.
All
We do
day
it for
long.
ourselves. We do it for
All
our
day.
business. So we love to talk with
Yes.
you. We love to earn the privilege to work with you as well. So thank you, audience. Aaron, thank you. Lon, thank you. Nicole, thank you. I appreciate it so
pleasure.
much.
Thanks for
So
organizing it.
good. Yes, thank you.
This is fun. We'll see you guys
Thank you.
next week on the webinar. In the meantime, we'll see you in the Facebook group.